Good morning, everyone. I think we're just waiting for Ms. Chandler to arrive, and then we'll be able to get going.
Mr. Chair, I just want to highlight that we received one statutory declaration for item 6, 129, 131 Dunskipper Drive.
Thank you very much, Secretary Treasurer. We're just waiting for Ms. Chandler. I wonder if Madam Coordinator could give her a quick call or email or text.
Sure, I'll check in with her now.
Thank you. There we go. Good morning, Ms. Chandler. Are you ready to go? Okay. Good morning and welcome to this online hearing of the Committee of Adjustment of the City of Ottawa under the Planning Act. This video conference is also live streaming on YouTube. With me are my fellow panel members, Jocelyn Chandler, Stephen Lewis, Terrence Otto, and Martin Vervoort. My name is Fabien Poulin, and I will be chairing this hearing today. The procedure for this hearing will be as follows. Listed on the agenda and appearing on the screen are applications we will hear today. For the sake of efficiency, the committee may deal with agenda items in a different order. Committee members have reviewed the planning reports and any written submissions in support or in opposition to each of the applications. Today, we will hear oral submissions from any interested parties. As part of the statutory public notification requirements, each applicant was required to post a sign on the property and file a statutory declaration confirming the sign posting. This declaration must be on file today before we can hear the application. Without it, I may have to adjourn the application or administer an oath if necessary. I understand we have just one statutory declaration, and that's from Dunskipper Drive. So we'll be administering the oath to all others. Can the coordinate? Okay, that's that. Before we begin, we have two items of business to address. Does any member present need to declare an interest in or any of the applications that are before us or are on the agenda of another committee panel?
No.
There are no declarations of interest. We also have to adopt minutes of the last public hearing. We have 2 minutes to adopt. That is minutes of April 7th and April 21st. All in favor of adoption of those minutes, please raise your hands. These applications are approved and adopted. We'll now hear the application scheduled for this hearing, and we'll deal firstly with any items that may be adjourned. Is there anyone present who wishes to request an adjournment of one of the applications to this hearing? I understand we have 3 items, 3 and 4, dealing with 17 Manchester. The agent is Mr. Sinclair. Mr. Sinclair, are you available? I can see.
Hello, Mr. Chairman.
Good morning, Mr. Sinclair. Would you like to go ahead?
Sorry, yeah, in consultation with the city, after the initial request for adjournment, we've made modifications to the conditions, and we are fine to be heard today if that's possible.
Okay, I'll just ask the city. Mr. Harrigan, are you in agreement with hearing this application today?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm actually the planner on the file,
Okay.
and we are in agreement that the application can be heard today.
Great, we'll hear it in order then. Thank you very much. The other application I believe that's looking to be adjourned is application number 5 having to do with 2021 Munster. Is Mr. Mulholland available?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Mulholland is having some issues logging in, so we may have to bring this application up in a few minutes.
Okay, we will do that then. Then let's proceed in order with application number 1. Application number 1 and 2 having to do with 45 Clover Loft Court. Lot line adjustment application to convey a portion of the property which will be merged with the abutting lands to the west. In addition, a minor variance for reduced lot area for the existing dwelling. Ms. Belvey, are you available? I can see your name, but you're muted.
Hi, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Thank you very much, Ms. Belfie. I need to administer an oath concerning the sign posting on your property. Are you available today to take that oath?
Yes, I am.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application of applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time? Do you swear?
I swear.
Please proceed and provide us with a brief summary of your applications today.
If you could put up the first slide, please. Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm not sure what all the yellow markings are, but this is property at 45 Clover Loft, shown as lot 22. It's sort of in the middle of the slide to the right of the green line. It's located in the Fringewood South community in Stittsville. The owner is applying for a lot line adjustment to sever a 0.8 meter wide piece of their property on the west side, shown in the dark green on this slide. The piece will be added to the vacant privately owned land to the west, shown in light green and labeled as Block 118. The purpose of the applications is to widen the width of this vacant land from 6.1 meters to 6.9 meters. This will provide sufficient width for a future potential private road with landscaping and screening on either side if it's required. The next slide, please. This is a slide of the subdivision plan for Fringewood South. Cloverloft Court is the street on the left-hand side, and Block 118 is outlined in red on this slide. The land in green is the subject of this application and is actually part of Block 118. The green area once was a private road known as Cripple Creek Crescent, which led to a home that was located in the west portion of Block 118. The home is being removed and the land is no longer being used as a private road. It's just vacant property at this point. As I said, it's actually residentially zoned. It's privately owned. It's vacant land that could potentially be developed in the future. The opportunity to acquire this 0.8 meter wide strip of land from 40 Cloverloft presented itself, and the owner of Block 118 thought it was good long-term planning to add this strip to his property. And the next slide, please. This is a sketch showing the remaining property, what would be left with after the severance. And it shows that the width of the property will meet the zoning 19 meter lot width requirement. The existing home will be set back more than the 1 meter side yard requirement. And there, you can see at the back left-hand corner, there's a frame shed that's right on the new proposed property line, and it will be moved so that it meets the zoning requirement of 1 meter away from the property line. A minor variance has been requested to allow a reduction in the lot area of lot 22 from 600 square meters to 579.4 square meters. No other variances are required. This reduction in lot area is minor in nature, and it will not impact the character of the neighborhood or the streetscape. The existing home will remain in the same location, and the lot won't look any different. A tree inventory was completed and a tree information report was submitted with the application. There is one distinctive tree, a white pine, which is shown on this sketch. in the rear yard, and it's approximately 3.3 meters from the current side lot line. And there are no plans to remove this tree. That will stay. The severance and minor variance is appropriate and conforms with the official plan policies. Planning for long-term development of residentially zoned lands is appropriate. The wider strip of land will allow for landscaping or screening, as will be determined in the future for any planning on the site. And the city's current and draft official plan encourages appropriate compatible infill development, and the lot line adjustment will allow this compatible screening along either side. That's the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Belfi. First of all, I'll ask the planning department if they've got any comments with respect to this application. I believe it's Mr. Harrigan.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Through you, the planning department has no concerns with this. We did identify through our review that the lot line adjustment will bring the shed within violation of the zoning bylaw. The applicant has been made aware of this, and condition has been applied to either have the shed removed or demolished. But no concerns other than that, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Belfi, you suggested in your application, your description, that you were going to move the shed, not remove it. Is that the case? Is it going to be moved or removed or demolished?
My understanding is that they'll move it.
Okay, is that okay with you, Mr. Harrigan?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it is. They can either remove it or demolish it. The choice is theirs.
No, she's saying she's going to move it, not remove
Yes.
it.
Okay, yes. Yes.
Thanks. Thank you. I'd like to ask the Conservation Authority if they have any comments, questions, or concerns.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have reviewed the application. We have no concerns with the proposed lot boundary adjustment. We note that the receiving lands are partially regulated by the Conservation Authority due to the Pool Creek River Valley. At any future development, the impacts would be reviewed at that time.
Thank you, Ms. Ogden. Now I'd like to go to the panel, ask the panel if they've got any questions, comments, or concerns about these two applications. Mr. Lewis.
None.
Mr. Otto.
Just one in regards to the private road. And they're talking about future development. Does that mean that that future private road may be supposedly taken over by the city? And if so, I think it's kind of narrow. Just questioning that to planners.
Mr. Harrigan.
At this time, through you, Mr. Chair, we have not talked about the city taking over this private laneway. It is a little too narrow right now, so it may be maintained as a private laneway. However, that conversation will have to take place when they apply to have this land developed or whatever they would like to do with this land.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, Mr. Otto?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Chandler, any questions, comments, or concerns?
No, but we did receive a comment from the public who had concerns about this, and just clarification on the status of that access road and block 18, I think was helpful, that it's all in private ownership. And I guess right now anyone who's using it is doing so at the sort of non-concern of the owner. It's not a right of way at the moment.
Thank you. Ms. Vervoort, any questions, comments, or concerns?
None, thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Belfi, you aware of the two conditions that are on this application?
Yes, I am.
Are you in agreement with both those?
Yes, we are.
Perfect. Thank you. I'd now like to ask the panel for approval of application number 1 and 2. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Your application is approved, Ms. Belfi. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Now we'll move on to applications 3 and 4. This has to do with 17 Manchester Street, application for consent to subdivide the property into 2 separate lots for the construction of a new detached dwelling on the newly created parcel of land. The existing dwelling and 2 of the detached sheds will remain on the parcel. Minor variance will permit reduced lot width for the proposed dwelling. Mr. Sinclair, are you available?
I
There
am.
you are.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I need to administer an oath concerning the signed posting on your property. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time? Do you swear?
I do, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Please proceed and provide us with a brief summary of your application.
Coordinator, if you could go to slide 1, please. The proposed severance and minor variance is for reduced lot width for one additional lot, which would be in the rear yard of 17 Manchester, fronting on Doherty Lane. So the retained portion would still front on Manchester, and the new portion, part 1, which is severed at the rear of the property, would front on Doherty Lane. Excuse me. The required minor variance is for reduced lot width, reducing the lot width from 20 meters as required under the zoning to 16.77 meters. In consultation with the city, we've deemed that this is not an extraneous ask, that it is minor in nature. And if you could go to slide 2, please. It is in conformance with what is being severed in the area, so it's not a new determination of parcel size in the area. It's something that has been done before, and it's in conformance. The proposed dwelling, if you could go to slide 3, is also within conformity of the streetscape and what is amassed in nature and housing on that street. So in terms of streetscape, we follow what is existing in the area, and we have not had any complaints from neighbors at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Sinclair. Now I'd like to ask Planning Department, Mr. Gordon, have you got any comments, questions on this application?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the Planning Department has no concerns with this application, subject to the conditions contained within the report. I would note that through conversation that occurred after the completion of this report, condition number 4, requiring the owners to enter into an infrastructure agreement, can be removed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gordon.
All right, Mr. Chairman, if I might ask that Mark review the end of condition number 3 as well. It seems that the end of condition number 3, starting with that the owner enter into an agreement with the city. I believe that is the predecessor to condition number 4, because it doesn't make sense to be tacked on at the end of condition number 3. It says, which provides the following covenant notice that runs with the land. And that would be that infrastructure agreement that's labeled in condition number 4, because the agreement or condition number 3 deals with a letter from an engineer, which couldn't be done and entered into an agreement with the city based on that letter.
Ms. Turkinson, would you have any comments on that?
If it's just a letter and it's satisfactory to the planning department, it should be fine, provided that it's a letter and not a report. If it was a report, then it's reasonable to ask that a development agreement be included in a development agreement.
So do we restate that, I guess, condition number 3? So somebody want to restate that so that it clearly defines what is intended?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. The That the owners submit a site servicing brief prepared by a professional civil engineer licensed in the province of Ontario for approval by the development review manager of the relevant branch within the Planning, Infrastructure, and Economic Development Department, or his or her designate, to be confirmed in writing from the department to the committee outlining the municipal servicing requirements for each unit and indicating, if required, that capacity exists within existing city infrastructure.
Mr. Sinclair, does that work for you?
That does, yes.
Okay. And since we're on the conditions, are you all comfortable with conditions 1, 2, and 5?
Yes, I am.
Great. With those amendments, I'd like to ask the panel to give any comments they happen to have. Ms. Chandler?
I have no comments or concerns.
Thank you. Mr. Vervoort?
I have no comments or concerns.
Mr. Otto?
No comments or concerns. Thank you.
Mr. Lewis?
Support the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask the panel for approval of this application with the amendments to the conditions as discussed. Please raise your hands if you're in favor. Application is approved. Thank you very much, Mr. Sinclair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Now we'll move on to application number 5. This one was suggested it was looking for an adjournment. Mr. Mulholland, are you available? I can see your name, Mr. Mulholland. You may be muted.
Hopefully that's working now.
There we go.
Sorry for the technical issues this morning.
That's all right. It's the time of our lives. We deal with it all the time. Mr. Mulholland, it was suggested that you were looking for an adjournment of this application. Are you still looking for that adjournment?
We were not looking for the adjournment. City staff has requested the adjournment. We're okay to proceed. If you guys would kindly add Mr. Barkhouse as well. He's president of Amstead. He has some a presentation regarding that specifically.
All right. Well, I'd like to ask Mr. Gordon his position on the request for adjournment. Mr. Gordon.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the reason for seeking the adjournment was that despite repeatedly asking for a mineral resource impact assessment, no such report has been provided, so staff cannot determine if the requested minor variance is in fact minor.
Okay, thank you very much. So is it Steve Barkhouse or Fred Barkhouse that will be making it?
It'll be Steve.
Okay. Mr. Barkhouse, please go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks for your time. I am Steve Barkhouse, and we do not consent to the postponement as it will cause significant and undue cost, stress, and difficulty for our client, and further penalize them for what we feel are city errors. We were notified of the requirement to provide the mineral impact study on May 11th, when in an email from senior staff on May 14th, it clearly states—
Mr. Chair, I cannot hear the applicant.
Mr. Chair, I can't hear him.
Start over.
Some of the other members
Can you turn up your microphone, Mr. Barkhouse? And I'm going to ask you to start again, please.
Okay. Can you hear me now? Sorry about that.
It's still difficult to hear you. Madam Coordinator, are you able to help with this?
I don't see a volume. I'm sorry.
He has to turn it up on his end. There's nothing I can do on our end.
Okay.
Hang on. How's that?
Keep on coming. Not really.
Dang. I'm sorry. I don't see a volume button anywhere. I'll talk very loudly. Does that do anything for you?
Yeah, that's better. Okay. Not the best, but it's better.
You know what? Give me one more second. Let me try something. One more.
Could you mute, Chris? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's much better.
Okay, you have to mute. Sorry about that. As you mentioned, these are the times of technical challenges. So I had mentioned that we do not consent to the postponement as it will cause significant undue cost, stress, and difficulty for our client and further penalize them. And we feel that it's as a result of errors made by the city. We were notified by the city, as stated, but we were notified on May 11th, just a few days ago, in an email. And senior staff, in following this up, sent an email on May 14th, which stated that we should have been notified prior to our minor variance application being accepted. And it should not have been accepted if they, in fact, did require this impact study. There's no way that the report could have possibly been prepared in time for this hearing, and the city's very well aware of that. We have spent numerous hours on the phone and via email communicating with different staff and different levels and departments, all in an effort to try and remedy this for today. I've talked to Mr. Gordon's manager late last evening, and I'm not getting anywhere with it. So to date, no one can explain why the report was arrested at such a late date. We've spoken to McIntosh and Perry engineers, Pool Chevrolet engineers, and both argued that the report is not required and is irrelevant to this case. And because the report was provided to the city with the original severance application in 2009, which I think a couple of the committee members might have sat in on. So they've further argued that the minor variance is not required because the city is misreading the 2009 severance, which expressly performed to create the building site in the first place. So the report was sent in 2009. As we read the official plan, which Mr. Gordon has referred us to, it states that if a mineral impact study is required when there's a severance application, when there's a zoning application, or when there's a plan of subdivision. We are none of those. And so we don't understand why. Like I said, the engineers don't understand why. And the city has a mineral impact study that was submitted in 2009. So for these reasons, we would oppose the delay.
Okay, thank you very much. Just discussing the adjournment, I'd like to ask the members if they have any questions with respect to the adjournment. Mr. Vervoort?
I think we need the report. I think it's a requirement, but that's my general view.
Ms. Chandler?
Although this does raise a lot of questions for me, I do think the ARA reports are required in order to establish residences adjacent quarries.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Otto?
I agree with the previous two people, but if the city already has this report from 2009, maybe they should bring it back up if we do happen to not hear this.
And what would they do with that report when they bring it back up?
Well, they could read it, for instance, I guess, and then decide if it's correct or not.
Okay, fair enough. Mr. Lewis, any comments about the adjournment?
Actually, I'm okay with the application. To see in the neighborhood, it does meet the.
More technical issues.
Yeah. Geez, we had someone on our side too. Mr. Puna, if I can give one more opportunity, if that's okay, before you.
I'll just see if we can't get Mr. Lewis back, just if he wanted to finish his comment, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
Madam Coordinator, is he still online? There he is.
I'm back on it. Everybody froze up. Whatever was happening at Mr. Barkhouse's computer must have came through the wires and got mine. But I don't know how much of that you heard. I said I'm okay. As far as I'm concerned, this application meets the 4 tests from what's over in the neighborhood. However, my colleagues, I think, are looking for a report. I think I'm outnumbered. So I guess I'll go with the majority on this time.
So I guess, Mr. Barkhouse, the majority is ruling that they would like to have the report in place. It'd be probably to your best interest not to go forward today and adjourn this until the report is presented. So I would suggest, I would ask the panel if they would like to adjourn this application today. All those in favor? Pardon me?
May I have another opportunity to speak before you make
Sure.
your final?
Sure.
Sorry. I didn't want to get too far into the presentation. I wasn't sure just what the etiquette was here. So I do think it's relevant that the minor variance is only required because of the way the city is reading the setback. And the setback was part of the original application in 2009 when the mineral impact study was presented. Okay, and that's when it is required. And the severance showed the house on the property and it showed the distance to the pit. Now, because the city is reading the definition of setback differently than they read it in 2009, the house no longer can be even built on the property, and therefore we're requiring minor variance. And there's no way in 2009 that we, nor you, committee members, would have ever agreed to sever a piece of property for the purpose of constructing a new home when the setback was beyond the property lines. So it's, I think, a last minute look at the file by the city, a loophole that they've seen that requires an impact study, and then not looking in the file to see that they already have the impact study. There's numerous houses well within this setback that have been built since 2009, and we have that as part of our presentation. And Mr. Barkhouse, who happens to be my father, has moved out of his home, waiting construction. He's living in a motorhome. Winter is fast approaching. And I'm deeply concerned about him, but I'm a little more concerned about me because he's going to end up moving in with me in the winter. And you guys know my dad. This is a lot to ask. But honestly, I really feel that if you look closely, that the impact study is not a requirement. It's very clear why it's a requirement. We do not fit into that category. The impact study, the only reason the city has told me why they need an impact study is because if someone in the future purchases the property and they don't know that there's a pit there, and they buy it and find out later that there's a pit there within 150 meters, then they may complain and Kavanaugh's will have difficulty. Kavanaugh's have given us a letter of support. We're happy to put a note on title if that's what you're looking for, but there's no way that the client should have to go through the expense of a very significant mineral impact study when there's one already been done, and the time delay with COVID pricing, this cost of this house has gone up $30,000 or $40,000 just because we've been forced to go to the minor variance, which we shouldn't have. If we wait another 3 or 4 months, it'll be outside their ability to purchase it. So again, I think that the penalty does not suit the situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barkhouse. So right now we're dealing with the adjournment of this application. I'd like to ask the panel if they're in favor of adjourning the application. All those in favor of adjournment, please raise your hand. We would like to adjourn this application, Mr. Barkhouse, and wait for the report required. To that end, Madam Coordinator, can you give us a date when Mr. Barkhouse would be able to next join the committee?
Well, Mr. Chair, I guess that would depend on how fast the report can be submitted.
Okay.
That's right, Mr. Chair. I believe the recommendation from the city planner is that this be adjourned sine die, with the big unknown being when that report might be made available for city staff's review. And so the recommendation that's on the table from the city planner is sine die.
Okay, so yes, Mr. Lewis.
I don't know if that's reasonable or not. Like, it might be just a fact of pulling out the 2009 report and changing the date and handing it in again, for God's sakes. I'd like to see a date go on it.
Ms. Chandler.
Given the circumstance, and if the 2009 ARA report is still applicable to what's being proposed on the site, I would be pretty comfortable with asking city staff to consider, consider rescheduling this from 2 weeks from now, and city staff making an effort to take a look at this report and see if any of the proponents' claims with respect to potential changes in interpretation or the content of that report can be addressed in 2 weeks. And if they can't, fine, bring it back to us. And then we're going to have to look at actually, and if it can't, then the proponent has to make sure that they have someone hired to address that ARA report and know what the timeline is. But why don't we give it 2 weeks? Because it sounds to me like maybe there's some room to sort this out in the meantime.
Mr. Barkhouse, you good with 2 weeks? Can't hear you. Okay, perfect. So can we please put this on the agenda for 2 weeks from now, the next committee meeting? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, your application will be put forward to the next meeting. Thank you, Mr. Barkhouse. Thank you, Mr. Mulholland. Now we'll move on to application number 6, having to do with 129 and 131 Dunskipper Road. Consent to subdivide the property into 2 separate parcels of land in order to create 2 new lots for future residential development. Ms. Libman, are you there?
I am. Hello.
Good morning.
Hi.
You are the only one I don't have to administer an oath to today.
Yeah,
Thanks
that's my pleasure.
Thanks for that. Can you please describe your application for us today?
Sure. So if we move to the next slide, there were a series of applications filed last year, the first 2 by myself and then the third by another entity. The intention there was to square off the 2 blocks in Plan 4M 1617 to just be squared off for sale and development. So you can see here the image, the yellow lands being block 237 and the red being part 1 on a reference plan. That application was approved and we filed a restrictive covenant, a registered restrictive covenant, requiring those lands to forever be dealt with together. Next slide, please. And this just shows the second application, so part 2 on the reference plan being added to block 238. And then the next slide. This shows the small part 14 on plan 4R 33187 being added to block 237 and part 1 from the previous reference plan. Now these were all filed as lot line adjustments, and the unintended consequence of that was the one-time conveyance. So parts 14, 1, and 2 have merged on title, and we cannot convey them in the manner in which we would like to. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. And the next one. So this is the intended outcome, to have the severed lands there being part 1 on plan 4R 32773, part 14 on 4R 33187 and block 237. And then on the next slide, we see from the secondary application that the severed lands would be part 2 and block 238. Next slide, please. So we have reviewed the comments that were received. There were no concerns, except that the Urban Design and Public Realm Group suggested that a private approach permit would be required for any new relocated or widened driveways. None of that is anticipated as part of this application, and no comments were received from the public. Next slide, please. So it's our submission that a plan of subdivision is not required to achieve the result that is desired here, and that the submitted applications meet the requirements under the Planning Act. Otherwise, I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Libman. Mr. Gordon, do you have any comments on behalf of the city?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the Planning Department has no concerns with this application, and there are no conditions contained within the report as the lots were pre-existing.
Thank you very much. Are there any comments from the panel? Ms. Chandler?
No comments or concerns, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Vervoort?
comments or concerns? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Otto,
Comments, thank you.
Mr. Lewis.
Looks good to me.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask the panel to approve this application. To that end, please raise your hand if you approve of the application. Your application is approved. Ms. Libman, thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, you too. Now we'll move on to application number 7. It's having to do with 433 Donald B. Monroe Drive, lot line adjustment application to convey a portion of the property to the abutting landowner to the west, known municipally as 435 Donald B. Monroe. Mr. Sterling, you're the agent on file on this. Are you available? Good morning.
Yes, I am, Mr. Chairman. Good morning.
Good morning. I need to administer an oath concerning the sign posting on your property. Are you available to do that today?
Yes, I am.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time?
I do.
Thank you very much. Please proceed and provide us with a brief explanation of your application.
So it's a rather straightforward application, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Faith is the owner of the 2 properties, one individually, the property to the left, and his former store is the property to the right. He is in the process of selling the single family dwelling, and the purchasers would like to widen the lot slightly. So it's a simple lot line adjustment by 0.375 of a meter. Conforms to all the zoning requirements still, leaves a 1.2 plus meter side yard for the retail establishment, which is in excess of the zoning bylaw requirements, and really nothing much more to add.
Thank you very much. Mr. Harrigan, I'd like you to make some comments on behalf of the city, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, we have no comments. We have no concerns with the application.
Thank you, Mr. Harrigan. I'd like to ask our conservation partners if they have any comments or questions, concerns.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We do note that both the severed and retained properties are regulated by the Conservation Authority as they are located within the meander belt erosion hazard of the Carp River. However, given the minor nature and no new lot is being created and the severed lands will be, it is just a lot line adjustment to the neighboring property, we have no concerns with the application.
Thank you, Ms. Ogden. Mr. Sterling, you're aware of the conditions on this property?
Yes, I am, Mr. Chairman.
Do you agree with
Yes.
the conditions? Great, thank you. I'd like to ask the committee then for.
Mr. Chair, we've lost Mr. Lewis.
Okay. We'll just wait a moment and see if we can't get him back. Madam Coordinator, can you give him a call?
Yep, I'll check in with him now.
Thank you.
Continuing example of why we in the rural area need high-speed internet.
Mr. Lewis.
Yeah, I got booted out there for a few minutes. I hope it wasn't something I said or did, but I have no problem with the application.
Okay. Any comments or questions or concerns from the panel, Mr. Vervoort?
None. It looks straightforward. I'm in support.
Okay. Mr. Otto?
No, none, thank you.
Ms. Chandler?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. I'd like to ask the panel for approval of this application. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Your application is approved, Mr. Sterling. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Stay safe.
Thank you. Now I'd like to move on to application number 8, having to do with 2141 Phelan Road West, lot line adjustment application to convey a portion of the property to the budding property to the west, known municipally as 2149 Phelan Road. Mr. Shipman, are you available? You're muted, Mr. Shipman. There you are.
Yes, thank you. Sorry.
That's okay.
There I am.
Yep. Are you available to take an oath concerning the signposting today?
Yes.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing, as instructed, and was clearly visible and legible during that time?
Yes.
Please proceed with a brief explanation of your application today.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman. This actually, this will suffice, I presume, for this application and the next application, which they're basically reciprocal applications. We have prepared these applications for reciprocal lot line adjustments between number 2141 Phelan Road and number 2149 Phelan Road. The reason for the applications is to address and recognize existing property improvements, landscaping features, this type of thing appear to have been completed in the absence of correct information regarding the boundaries locations. So the neighbors have spent considerable sums of money with features on the ground, and rather than rip them out and redo things, they've requested to do this reciprocal lot line adjustment just to simply recognize the facts on the ground. I don't see anything that is in contravention of the official plan or zoning bylaw. So I think these are pretty benign applications.
Thank you, Mr. Shipman. Just a matter of clarification. Yes, this is for both applications 8 and 9, and the oath was pertaining to both signposting for both 8 and 9. I'd like to ask Mr. Harrigan if he's got any comments on behalf of the city.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the planning department believes that this does meet the requirements of a minor adjustment, and both properties will stay within the zoning requirements. So we have no concerns.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask the panel if they've got any questions, comments, or concerns. Mr. Otto.
No, I'm fine with it. Thank you.
Mr. Lewis.
No problem.
Mr. Vervoort.
No concerns. I think both applications meet the provincial policy statement and the official plans. I'm fine.
Thank you. Ms. Chandler.
I have no comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask the panel to approve both application 8 and 9. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Your application is approved. Did we lose Mr. Lewis again? No, there he is.
No, I'm back.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. Your
Thank you.
application is approved, Mr. Shipman.
Thank you very much.
Okay, my internet bill must be behind. I'll have to get right onto that. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone.